And we start with Liverpool and Trent Alexander-Arnold, who responded to recent criticism in style with a fantastic free kick against Rangers in the Champions League. He didn't face the toughest night defensively, as Liverpool dominated, though were only able to add one other goal as Mo Salah scored a penalty. Now, as we mentioned, significant response from Trent Alexander-Arnold ahead of his 24th birthday on Friday. His place in England's World Cup squad isn't guaranteed, though there was another staunch defence from his club manager and teammates following the game.
They played a good game, so defensively especially, wonderful goal. How I said, we set it up differently. We cannot talk about that every week, but it's not, Trent has no defensive problem. We had a defensive problem, hopefully had, because our timing was not right, and we take risk in defending. Everybody knows that. If then the timing is not right, you open gaps, and these gaps are very often in the back of Trent. But not because of him, but because of other situations, and then he has to track back. And yes, how I said, we were not in the perfect moment, and that's why we adjusted it slightly. A wonderful goal, yeah, what can I say? I would now say that's Trent, but it's long ago that he last time scored a free kick, so I'm happy that he had that still in his locker.
Well, Alexander-Arnold had nearly 100 touches last night, more than any other player. He created one chance and scored one. There will be tougher tests to come for him to prove his defensive skill set. He won 3 tackles, didn't record any blocks, interceptions or clearances, but won possession 11 times.
The quality to do it, and he showed it today again. But just in general, you know, I've been in the UK now almost for, what is it, 8-9 years, and everyone here is very good to praise a player very high up until the sky, and let them fall as hard as they can. So that's you know, that's what we as players have to deal with, and we forget about the well-being of players. We forget about all this stuff, and everyone is then talking about how we should all accept it and stuff. So for him to just carry on and work, but not only for him, you know, I can mention other players as well, but for him to deal with it and to show a reaction today is what we need, all of us. And I think in order to do that, I think it's important that we back him and the manager and the club and the fans, and I think that's the case.
I mean, we all know what Trent can do, and I think the publicity that he's been getting is just absolutely astonishing, to be honest. A world-class player like him getting what he's been getting, I think today showed himself and the world who he really is. So, I mean, I couldn't be proud of him, and yeah, I mean, to get the first goal for a change, it was amazing for us. Something that we could build on, and we did throughout the game, and yeah, we got the 3 points, which was the main thing.
Well, the former Liverpool goalkeeper David James is with us this morning, and for that I am delighted. So very good morning to you. Let's start with Trent Alexander-Arnold. How much would he have relished that response that he gave last night?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful free kick. He does generally take wonderful free kicks. Defensively, I mean, just looking at the stats there, it wasn't like he was overexposed. I think as a professional, his first thought would have been win the game, because Liverpool needed to win that game. They did, and he scored. So overall, I think he would have been very happy. Not necessarily out there to shut people up. No, but are we in danger of getting carried away with Trent Alexander-Arnold here? I mean, I'm thinking of other players in that England squad who you could argue actually have been more harshly treated. I think in Ben Chilwell, when Gareth Southgate has played a right back rather than playing him in the left back spot. Played 3 at the back. He didn't pick Chilwell. He put Saka in there. So Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't the only one who is sometimes not in favour in that England squad. Yet it seems to be that everyone's focusing on him, which seems a little bit unfair. Well, I can think of other defenders in the England squad as well that have had a lot of focus recently. But I think the difficulty for a player like Trent at the moment is because it is right now. Over the course of a career, you might look back at these moments and think, well, OK, it wasn't particularly great for me, especially with the either selection or the media, whatever. But at the end of his career, he would look at it and say, well, I overcame that and became the player that everyone expected me to do from the beginning. I'm thinking of as I say, other defenders for other big football clubs, and he is one of the biggest football clubs in the world. So the focus on Trent will be, I think, a little bit more acute than perhaps Ben Chilwell at a big club, but not as big a club.
Yeah, I was fascinated to hear Virgil van Dijk's comments there, actually about player welfare and dealing with the criticism. We only get to see the players for the 90 minutes, yet they have to live their lives for the rest of the 7 days a week, don't they? And it's kind of flippant to sort of criticise a player, but they've got to live with that all week. So is player welfare, mental health, how much should we be taking this into account?
Yeah, I think we have to focus on it. The big issue is what support networks in place. And when I say that, a football club can have a dedicated officer, if you like, to look after players' mental health. But ultimately, if the player hasn't got a good support network around them, and I mean at home or within the club with the players or staff, then you'll end up navigating towards negative feedback or negative media. I mean, back in when I was playing, I went through similar situations, didn't have the support around me, and ended up reading newspapers, believing what people are saying in newspapers, I think, which is probably the worst case, similar to today with social media. If you can talk about the game itself, sort of talk about every aspect, break it down, understand what's good and bad, then you don't worry too much about other people's opinions. For one example was me going into a supermarket and thinking that the woman at the checkout thought I was a dodgy goalie, and then the woman actually apologising to my family, saying that she didn't think that at all. But that's what I believed at the time because I didn't have people to talk to.
Because dressing rooms, I guess, like society, are changing for the better with regards to mental health. But I would think there's still very much of a philosophy within a football team that if you voice something, it'll be seen as a weakness, and will a manager pick me? Will he feel that I'm not in a good enough state of mind to go out there and play 90 minutes? So the fear of speaking up, however many welfare officers you have at a club, must be quite intense.
Yeah, trust is a big issue, and again, that's about the support network. I mean, I think if you're free in the beginning to be able to talk about performance in a good or a bad way, I mean, what you'll find is generally it's not as good as you thought it was, it's not as bad as you thought it was, and therefore you end up in with a sort of a smaller parameters of performance. If the welfare officer or whoever it is at the football club, it could even be the kit man, that's how far you can go. I mean, as long as they understand where you're at, if there's a concern that they have about you from your mental health affecting performance, then that's a conversation you can have and then find a way of dealing with it. I mean, it can be a very, very dark place when you can't speak to people. You end up becoming very insular, I would argue, and therefore you're trying to fight everything on your own. And you can't do it on your own. Doesn't matter what club you're playing at, you can't do it on your own.
Yeah, it's a tough place to be. It sounds like.
Paradoxically, yeah, because as I say, especially for someone who's playing at one of the top football clubs, the whole world knows what you're doing. The whole world, you think, has an opinion on it. But then you become even more lonely. And as I say, with a good network, you get through this and you actually enjoy football. And sometimes, even in bad performances, you can still enjoy life, get over it very quickly, and be the great footballer that you want to be.
But it can even follow you to the supermarket.
It can. I never shop there again, though.
No, okay. Defensively, I mean, with all this around Trent Alexander-Arnold, there has never been anything but praise for him offensively. It's the other side of the game where perhaps fingers are pointing, but it was interesting to hear Jurgen Klopp there say, actually, hang on a second, this is things that maybe is going on in the other areas of the pitch as well, and we should be mindful of that. So how much of that is a factor here too?
Yeah, I think it's a collective responsibility. It's if you look at Liverpool's season, the amount of times they've conceded as opposed to the number of goals they've conceded, it's a far cry from a couple of seasons ago where it was a clean sheet every other game almost. I think last season Alisson and that Liverpool defence had the Golden Glove for the number of clean sheets. So What's funny is that even when Liverpool were keeping clean sheets, it seemed an opinion that Trent wasn't the best defender, which I found quite annoying because he was part of a defensive unit which was keeping lots of clean sheets. So if there's one thing that's following like a confirmation bias or a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, it's kind of they're waiting for these incidents to happen. And like Jurgen said, there's a lot more to his game, but there's a lot more players in the side which are contributing to what Liverpool are at the moment.
I guess, is it a frustration maybe for him as well? Because what Jurgen Klopp was saying is where they have shown defensive frailties, his ball's in over behind him into that area. But he is the only one really in a normal Liverpool setup that provides the width on that side. So tactically, the way the team is set up means inevitably there will be gaps. That's not his fault. There'll be gaps behind him, isn't it?
Exactly. And if he's, I think one of the problems is, especially when you're commentating on a game or ex-players, and I think Virgil van Dijk touched on this recently as well. The player or the commentator will always say that the player on the field should be doing something else. Now, if the player's doing what he wants to do, not what the manager wants to do, then obviously the team's going to fall apart. Now, Trent, you would argue, is doing exactly what Jurgen wants. Therefore, Jurgen knows exactly what the outcome could be. And if other teams, like we had on the weekend with Brighton, have the capability of exploiting that, then, like you say, tactically, Jurgen would have to look at what he's doing or ask his players to do different things. You couldn't have 11 players just running around doing what they wanted.
No. Defensively, though, in your opinion, yeah, I mean, he can tackle.
Yes.
And you know,
he's a great defender.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
So I'm scratching my head at what the problem is here.
It's just too easy to say that he isn't.
Yeah. So as it was not that long ago, we were talking about Trent Alexander as being the best right back in the world. Mm-hmm. Has that opinion changed then? And what does he need to do? Ignore his manager then and just stay deep all the time and not get forward? I mean, how does he get back to that position?
Well, I think and Virgil van Dijk's probably a great example or comparison here. When you're at your best, it is so hard to stay at that level. The difference is that once you're not at your best, people will say that you're not at your best, and it becomes a dichotomy that either you're good or bad, or great or not great. What I think you find is, like Virgil van Dijk, him not being at his best is still better than most. And therefore, what you're hoping is that they get back to that level. Trent Alexander, I think, is a fantastic defender. Going forward, he's fantastic as well. Once he gets back to the form where both are in sync, there won't be an argument. Mm.
So having weighed all that up and discussed all of that, for you, does he A, get into the England squad, and B, does he get into the England starting lineup for that opening World Cup game?
If the teams were to be picked right now, I mean, I'd get him in the squad, of course. If the teams were to be picked now, I think it probably wouldn't start. I think Gareth's already demonstrated that as we speak, but there are enough games before now in Qatar for Trent to put himself well into the picture and arguably put him in the starting lineup. I mean, again, he's a quality player, so I wouldn't write him out from starting in the first game. But at the moment, we've got to take it as is. I don't think he would start.